What if Ned Stark demanded trial by combat and named the Hound as his champion? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The black cells are exactly what their name promises. No windows, no torches, no sound beyond the drip of water, somewhere in the dark, and the far-off clang of a grate that opens and closes at intervals Ned cannot predict. He stops trying to track time after the first few days. He measures his cell by touch instead. 12 steps one way, 8 the other. He learns the cold by the way it settles into his broken leg, the wound from Jaime's ambush that has not properly healed, and will not heal down here on old rushes in the pitch dark. He presses weight onto it carefully, feeling where the pain lives. He can walk on it. Not quickly. Not well. But he can walk. The leg makes a grinding sound when he presses it wrong, which he has learned to avoid. He has checked it over and over in the dark, and it is the one piece of information his mind keeps returning to in the long hours, circling back the way a man circles back to the only candle left in a very dark room. Varys comes on the 4th day, or the 5th. He arrives without announcement, a torch in his hand, his powdered face carved into an expression of practiced concern. He crouches to Ned's level and sets the torch in the bracket on the wall and says nothing for a moment, just watches him. "I bring you a way out," Varys says. "Lady Cersei is willing to offer terms." Ned says nothing. He watches the torchlight. He has not seen fire in days, and it hurts his eyes. "Confess," Varys says. "Confess treason. Swear fealty to King Joffrey. Urge your son Robb to stand down his banners. In exchange, your life. The wall, Lord Stark. The Night's Watch, where a man of your honor might do real good in the world." Ned listens. "And my daughters," he says. "Sansa remains at court, as a ward. She will be kept safe. You trust that promise?" Varys looks at him for a long moment. Something in his face shifts, the warmth of the performance dropping away. "I trust that it is the best available option," he says. "I would not lie to you about that, my lord." Ned is quiet for a time. He thinks about Cersei in the throne room, the cold smile of a woman who had already won before he walked through the door. He thinks about Littlefinger's hand on his shoulder and the spears of the city watch turning the wrong way. He thinks of every Lannister word he has taken in good faith since the day he rode south to serve his king, and what each one has cost him. He thinks about Sansa at court, safe for now, on the strength of a promise from the woman who engineered all of this. "My leg," Ned says. "The wound from Jaime's men. It has not healed. I cannot fight." Varys goes very still. He watches Ned with eyes that have seen too much. "An injured man can name a champion," Ned says. "A lord cannot be denied trial by combat. That is the law." He pauses. "And I know who I want. The crown will name whoever it likes against yours," Varys says carefully. "I know." Ned looks at him. "I name Sandor Clegane." The silence that follows is the longest Varys has allowed to sit in Ned's presence. Then he stands, takes his torch, and leaves without another word. They bring Ned out of the black cells in the morning. Someone has found him, clean clothes, dark wool, plain and decent, and he dresses in the dark and stands in the inner yard of the Red Keep, blinking in the grey morning light. He breathes air that moves for the first time in days. He walks slowly, his leg dragging slightly on the cobbles, flanked by 4 gold cloaks. They take him through the castle and out through the gates and down into the city. King's Landing has come out to watch. The crowds line both sides of the road to the great sept of Baelor, 10 and 15 deep, small folk and tradesmen and children perched on shoulders, the whole run of them pressing close enough that the guards have to push them back. Ned walks between the gold cloaks and keeps his eyes forward. He passes a woman with an infant who stares at him without expression. He passes young men who go quiet as he goes by. He hears his name somewhere in the press, spoken low and urgent, and he does not react. He keeps walking, The road opens onto the plaza, and the crowd thickens, and for a moment, the sound of the city is very large around him. 10,000 people drawing the same breath, waiting for something none of them can name yet. The great sept of Baelor rises above the plaza, its crystal dome pale in the grey morning sky. The plaza has been cleared, the crowd pushed to its edges, the centre, open cobblestone. On an elevated chair at the sept's base sits Joffrey Baratheon, 12 years old, wearing his new crown, fighting to hold himself to stillness. His mother stands beside him, golden-haired and composed, her face giving nothing away. Behind them, the small council stands in attendance. Pycelle bent over his staff, Littlefinger with his hands clasped, his eyes moving carefully over the assembled crowd, cataloguing. Varys, who has somehow arrived before Ned, despite having left the same dungeon, and at the far edge of the platform, half behind Cersei, Sansa. Ned sees her. She is rigid, her hands clasped in front of her, watching him with an expression she is working very hard to hold steady. She is 12 years old, and she has been in the hands of these people for weeks, and she has not broken. Ned keeps his face still and looks away before she can read what is in it. The proceeding begins. A septon reads the charges in a voice trained for cathedrals. Treason, conspiracy against the crown, high crimes against the realm. The words fall across the open stone. Ned listens to each one and feels his leg throb and watches Joffrey's face, the face of a boy who is genuinely furious at being required to perform patience. When the septon finishes, silence holds. "Lord Stark," Joffrey says. His voice is still thin, still cracking at the upper register. "You have heard the charges. Do you confess?" Ned looks at Sansa one final time. Her clasped hands, her set jaw, the way she is holding herself together in front of everyone who matters in this kingdom. He thinks of what a Lannister promise has been worth to him. He looks back at the king. "I do not confess," he says. "I am innocent of these charges, and I invoke my right as a lord of the 7 kingdoms to demand trial by combat." His voice is steady. "My leg was badly wounded when members of your household attacked my men in the streets of this city. I cannot fight in my own defense. I therefore name a champion to stand for me." He pauses. "I name Sandor Clegane." The plaza goes quiet the way a fire goes out, all at once, completely. 3 full seconds of silence. Ned counts them. Then Joffrey surges up from his chair, his face gone red, and starts to speak. Cersei's hand comes down on his arm. Joffrey stops, as if he has hit a wall. Her grip does not look gentle. She is not looking at her son. She is looking at the crowd, at every lord and knight and bannerman and small folk in this plaza, and her face does not change. "The law is clear," she says. Her voice carries across the plaza without effort. "Lord Stark's request will be taken under consideration." Joffrey turns to her. His jaw is tight. "Mother, every lord in this realm is watching." Her voice drops, just for him. "And you will not give them reason to question the justice of your reign before your first month is out." Joffrey sits. He does it slowly, with visible effort. Pycelle confers with the septon in a rapid murmur. Littlefinger watches all of it and says nothing. Sansa has gone very still, her white-knuckled hands the only thing that has changed about her. The High Septon steps forward. He does not enjoy being at the center of events like this, but he knows his law. The right of trial by combat cannot be denied to an accused lord of the realm, he announces. The named champion must be present and available in King's Landing. The Crown will have until the fortnight's end to name its own champion in answer. Lord Stark is to be remanded to suitable quarters in the Red Keep, pending the trial. They lead Ned off the platform. His leg drags on the stone. At the edge of the plaza he glances left on instinct, and there at the base of the great statue of Baelor the Blessed, pressed among the crowd, is a small dark-haired girl in rough clothes, watching him with eyes that could burn through walls. He does not stop. He does not react. He keeps walking, and as he passes the nearest guard, he breathes 2 words so quietly the guard cannot be sure of what he heard. With that, they bring Ned Stark to a room in the Tower of the Hand. It has a window. Through it he can see King's Landing going about its business without him, rooftops and smoke, and the distant grey of Blackwater Bay. He stands at the window for a long time, his weight on his good leg, breathing air that moves. Somewhere in this city his younger daughter is hiding. He does not know where. He files the thought carefully away, the way you sheathe a blade, and stands at the window a moment longer. Outside in the corridor, the gold cloaks settle into position. Further off in the keep, he hears a door close hard, the sound carrying through old stone. He sits on the edge of the bed and looks at his hands, calloused still from a sword he no longer has. Joffrey is furious. Cersei is calculating. And the Hound is somewhere in this keep right now, learning for the first time that Eddard Stark has placed his life in his hands without asking him. Nobody asked. That is not how the law works. It is simply the law, and it has just changed everything. Ned stares at the ceiling, as he has made the only move he had left. He will find out, soon enough, if it was enough. The small council convenes within the hour, in the Tower of the Hand. The rooms were Ned Stark's 2 days ago. His papers have been cleared, and his bannerman's maps taken down from the walls, but something of him remains in the place, a quality of the air, a stillness that has not yet been replaced. Cersei does not appear to notice. She takes the seat at the head of the table as if she has always sat there, which in most meaningful ways she has. Pycelle settles into his chair with the slow care of a mammon made entirely of old bones. Varys glides to his place without a sound. Littlefinger is there first, as he always is, his fingers steepled and his eyes already moving. Joffrey stands in the doorway. "Not now," Cersei says. "It is my counsel," Joffrey says. His voice is still high and tight with the fury from the plaza, cracking at the upper edge. He is 12 years old, and he is a king, and a man he wanted dead just walked free in front of 10,000 people. Cersei turns. She looks at her son for a long moment, measuring. "You may sit at the head of this table, and let every man in this room watch you decide what to do," she says. "Or you may wait outside for 1 hour while I resolve a legal problem, and then you may be king as long as you like. Which do you want?" Joffrey's jaw works. He looks at Littlefinger, who offers nothing. He looks at Varys, who watches him with soft, patient eyes. He turns and goes. The door closes behind him. Cersei faces the table. "The King's Guard," she says. "Which of them can we put against the Hound and expect to win?" The silence answers before anyone does. The men of the King's Guard remaining in King's Landing are knights, sworn and capable, and against most men in the realm they would be more than sufficient. The Hound is not most men. Pycelle begins sorting through his papers with the methodical unhurry of a man who has no answer and is hoping the papers will provide one. Varys folds his hands in his lap. It is Littlefinger who speaks first, because Littlefinger always speaks when silence is working. "Ser Jaime," he says pleasantly. "Lord Commander of the King's Guard, the finest swordsman in the 7 Kingdoms by most accounts, the obvious candidate." "Ser Jaime is in the Riverlands," Cersei says. "Then we should send for him immediately. A man can cover great distance when the motivation is pressing." Littlefinger tilts his head. The question is whether the road and the fortnight cooperate. Cersei is already doing the calculation. She has been doing it since the plaza, since the moment the words left Ned Stark's mouth and the air changed. Jaime's position in the Riverlands, the roads, the weather, the time. The fortnight is tight. It is possible, but it is tight. And tight is not a comfort when the stakes are what they are. She is also thinking about Gregor. She has been thinking about Gregor since before Jaime's name left Littlefinger's mouth. The mountain is in the Riverlands. Yes, raiding Tully lands on her father's orders, doing what her father asked him to do with the particular thoroughness that makes Gregor Clegane terrifying and useful in equal measure. But the Riverlands are not the edge of the world. A hard rider covers that distance in 3 days, 4 if the roads are bad, and Gregor against the Hound is not a question whose answer anyone doubts. The Raven arrives in the afternoon. It comes from a rider who escaped the field, and short messages from escaped riders carry a specific kind of weight. Cersei reads it once, then reads it again. Then she sets it on the table. Robb Stark's cavalry cut off Jaime Lannister's force in the Whispering Wood. The Lannister column was routed. Jaime Lannister is taken prisoner. Pycelle makes a sound like a man who has swallowed something wrong. Varys's expression does not change at all, which tells Cersei that Varys already knew or strongly suspected. Littlefinger reaches across the table and picks up the message with the easy manner of a man who believes information belongs to whoever reads it, and sets it down. "Well," he says, "that settles the question of Sir Jaime." Cersei does not look at him. She is looking at a fixed point somewhere past the wall, past the city, past the news. For a moment, her face is the face of a woman, not a queen. Something moves behind her green eyes that is not strategy. It is brief, and she does not allow it an audience. Then she looks at Pycelle. "Send a raven to Gregor Clegane in the Riverlands," she says. He is to leave the raiding immediately and ride for King's Landing alone. He brings no men. He brings no army. He rides fast, and he arrives before the fortnight is out. Pycelle reaches for a quill. "And the legal matter," she continues. "The law requires the champion to be present and available. Pycelle, you will speak with the High Septon this evening. You will explain that the Crown's chosen champion requires several days' travel to reach the city, that this is the precise contingency the fortnight provision exists to accommodate, and that the High Septon's wisdom and generosity in allowing the full period are already recognized and appreciated." She pauses. "He will find himself in agreement." Pycelle nods. He has been nodding in agreement with the Lannisters for longer than most men in this room have been alive, and he is good at it, Varys speaks quietly. "If Gregor Clegane is recognized as the Crown's champion, the Hound will know what is coming before the trial begins. He has reason to be motivated by that knowledge." He leaves it there, soft and unfinished, which is Varys's method. "Good," Cersei says. "Let him be motivated. Motivated men make mistakes." Littlefinger clears his throat in a manner that suggests he has a thought he is generously offering rather than keeping to himself. There is a simpler path, of course. If Lord Stark were to reconsider his position before the trial takes place, the whole matter becomes moot. A confession offered freely at this stage would still carry the same terms. He spreads his hands. "I only note it." "Noted," Cersei says, in a tone that ends the subject. With that, the council disperses. The ravens go out. One to Gregor in the Riverlands, with Cersei's instructions, plain and short. One to Tywin Lannister with the news about Jaime, which is a message Cersei composes slowly and revises twice before she is satisfied with its tone. Tywin's response to the loss of his heir will not be warm, and she has no interest in making it worse. Meanwhile, across the city in modest rooms near the Street of Steel, Barristan Selmy sits with his sword across his knees and has nowhere particular to go. He is 61 years old, and until 3 days ago, he was Lord Commander of the King's Guard, a title sworn for life, a post that, in all the long history of the Order, has never been dissolved by royal command. Joffrey dissolved it anyway, and Barristan is still trying to locate the correct response to that fact. He has heard about the trial. A man who has spent 40 years at the center of power does not stop hearing things simply because he has been pushed to its edge. Ned Stark demanded trial by combat. He named the Hound. Cersei could not refuse him in front of that crowd. Barristan turns this over for a long time in the quiet of his room. He does not move to offer himself as Ned Stark's champion. He is not Ned Stark's man. He was never Ned Stark's man. But he sits with his sword in his lap, and he thinks about what it means that a man invoked an ancient right in a court that has spent a week deciding which laws it will honor, and the court had no choice but to honor it. Outside, King's Landing keeps moving. The city does not care about the finer points. Spectacle is coming. The whole city can feel it building the way you feel a storm before the clouds arrive, in the pressure of the air and the way people stand a little closer together when they talk. The White Sword Tower is quieter than the rest of the Red Keep, which is one of the things Sandor Clegane has always hated about it. He has been in and around these towers his whole life, and the White Sword Tower has always felt like a sept to him, hushed and smelling of candle wax and clean linen, and the particular stillness of men who have taken a vow and spend their days half convincing themselves it meant something. He is the only one of them who never took a vow. He is also, as of 3 days ago, one of them. He sits in the small room at the tower's base, where the King's Guard take their meals, and looks at the white book lying on the table. Someone has opened it to a fresh page with his name at the top. No title before it. No, sir. The hand that wrote it left the honorific blank, which Sandor did not ask for, but appreciates anyway. He is the only non-knight in the 700-year history of the Order. He knows this because 3 separate men have told him so in the past 2 days, in tones ranging from outrage to something closer to admiration, and he has told all 3 of them that he doesn't care, which is true, and that it changes nothing, which is also true. What Eddard Stark has done does not change with it. A man named him as his champion in front of the whole court, and the whole city, and the law does the rest automatically. Sandor has been in enough legal disputes, lived close enough to enough great lords to know exactly what the law does. It closes around a named champion like a fist. Refuse and be executed. Abandon the field and be executed. Lose deliberately and face a charge that carries the same result. The law does not care about Sandor Clegane's relationship to the man he is defending, or the king he serves, or the brother he knows is coming. The law cares about the shape of the thing, and the shape of this thing is a trap. He has been in traps before. He is still alive, but he would be lying if he said this one didn't have particular dimensions. The summons from Joffrey comes within the hour. Sandor goes. The king is pacing, which is what he does when he is furious, back and forth across his chambers with the caged energy of a boy who has been denied something and has not yet found an outlet for the feeling. He is 12 years old and golden-haired, and at this particular moment there is nothing appealing about him at all. "You will refuse," Joffrey says, before Sandor has cleared the door. "Tell them you have an injury. Tell them you're ill. Tell them anything that ends this." "I can't," Sandor says. "I am the king." "Aye," Sandor says, "and I'm a man who gets executed if he walks away from a lawfully named trial by combat. The law is the law. You don't change it the day after it's invoked in front of 10,000 people." Joffrey's jaw tightens. He stops pacing. "Then lose. Fight him. And lose. It doesn't have to last long." Sandor looks at him. He has looked at a great many things in his life that he would rather not have looked at, and the expression on Joffrey's face is somewhere in that catalogue, though not near the top. "No," he says. "I am ordering you." "Then find someone to carry out the order. I don't lose fights on purpose." He pauses. "I don't lose them by accident either. That's why Stark named me. You want a man who'll throw the bout, you've got 5 others with white cloaks. Go ask them." Joffrey stares at him with the expression of a boy who has just discovered his favorite dog will not come when he calls. He opens his mouth. Before the words arrive, the door opens and Cersei steps in. She looks at Joffrey once. Just once. He closes his mouth. He leaves. Cersei watches him go, and then she turns to Sandor, and what passes between them in the next few seconds is the thing that happens between people who have known each other a long time and do not need to spend words on the parts that are already understood. "My brother won't be riding," she says. Her voice is flat and even. "Jaime is taken. Robb Stark has him." She holds Sandor's gaze. "Gregor is coming from the Riverlands." Something moves in Sandor's face. Not much, just a tightening around the eye on the undamaged side, a small readjustment of the set of his jaw. "I thought you should know," Cersei says. "Not as a threat, as information. You'll fight harder knowing who it is, which serves us." She lifts one shoulder slightly. "Do with it what you like." She goes. The door closes. Sandor stands in the empty chamber for a moment, looking at nothing, and then he goes too. A guard brings him to Ned Stark's room in the Tower of the Hand. There is a legal provision for it, a champion's right to receive instruction from the man he represents, and whoever drafted the paperwork invoked it without being asked. The guard stays in the corridor. Sandor goes in. Ned Stark is standing at the window. He turns when Sandor enters. He is a lean man, grey-eyed, with a face that looks like it was made out of northern weather. He has been in a dungeon for 2 weeks, and it shows, but the stillness in him has not changed. He looks at Sandor, the way you look at a thing you have made a decision about and have no intention of reconsidering. "Thank you," Ned says. "Don't," Sandor says. Ned considers this for a moment. "All right. I'm here because the law says I have to be. The moment it doesn't, I owe you nothing. You understand that?" "I understand it," Ned says. He says it the way a man confirms a direction on a road, simple and without caveat. There is no performance in it. Sandor has heard men agree to things his whole life, and most of them are lying to themselves about whether they mean it. Ned Stark is not doing that. "Who do you think they'll put against me?" Ned asks. "Gregor." There is no point dressing it up. Ned takes this in. "Can you beat him?" Sandor looks at him. "I don't know," he says. It is the honest answer. He has never fought Gregor. Not all the way through. Ned nods slowly, as if this is a satisfactory response, and maybe it is. The man has been living on honest answers recently, and they have served him better than the comfortable kind. "My younger daughter," Ned says. "Arya. She's somewhere in this city." "Do you know where?" "No. Neither do I." He turns back to the window. "She's alive." "I believe that." Sandor says nothing. There is nothing to say to it. A knock at the door interrupts them. The guard opens it, and Sansa Stark steps in, flanked by a Lannister woman who waits in the doorway. Sansa is auburn-haired and blue-eyed, and 12 years old, and she is holding herself together so carefully that the effort has become invisible to anyone not looking for it. She crosses the room and takes her father's hands. Ned holds them. He does not hold them long. "Are you well?" she asks. "Well enough," he says. "You?" "Yes." Her eyes flick to Sandor, flat in his corner, and then back to her father. Her voice drops slightly. "They're not unkind." "Good." Ned holds her gaze for a moment. "Listen to me. Be careful. With what you say, where you say it, who is in the room, every room." He pauses. "You understand me?" "Yes," she says, and the word is very quiet. The Lannister woman shifts in the doorway. Sansa squeezes her father's hands once and lets go and crosses back to the door, and she is gone, and the door closes. Ned turns to the window and says nothing. Sandor leaves. In the corridor he walks back through the keep in the grey afternoon light, turning over the shape of things. His brother is riding hard for this city. Ned Stark is standing at a window he cannot leave, and Sandor Clegane is the thing between them, not by choice and not by love, but by the cold logic of a law that has been waiting patiently for exactly this kind of moment. He can't find a version of the next fortnight that doesn't end in blood. He stops looking for one. The morning after the Whispering Wood, Robb Stark's camp wakes to rain. It falls soft and grey through the trees, settling into the churned earth between the fires, finding every boot print and sword mark that the night left behind. They lost men. The fires burn at odd intervals now, gaps where there were men yesterday, and every man in the camp has learned already which of his neighbours are absent and won't be coming back. But they won. That fact sits over everything like a low light, real but not yet believed the way of victory never quite is on the first morning after. Robb is 15 years old, and he won it. He stands outside his command tent in the grey morning with mud on his boots and grey wind close at his side, and he is trying very hard to look like a man who has done this kind of thing before. Most of his captains believe him, which is all he can ask for. In a tent at the edge of the camp, under heavy guard, Jaime Lannister is alive and in chains. He was taken unhurt from the field, and he holds himself with the easy dignity of a man who considers his current situation temporary and slightly beneath his notice. He has golden hair and green eyes, and he looks nothing like a prisoner, which is its own problem. The Raven arrives at mid-morning, carried by a rider who pushed his horse hard and arrived breathless with the news folded inside his coat. Robb reads it, standing, with his mother beside him and grey wind pressed against his leg. His father is alive. Ned Stark is alive, and he demanded trial by combat, and he named the Hound as his champion, and Joffrey could not refuse him under the law. Robb reads it twice. He reads it a third time to make sure the words are saying what they appear to be saying, because he has spent the better part of 2 weeks preparing himself for the alternative, and the alternative has become very large in his mind. He has not said it aloud to anyone, not to his captains, not to his mother. He has simply held it, the possibility of a world in which he rides south to avenge a death and not to free a living man. It is not a possibility he knew how to talk about. Now he does not have to. He's alive, he says. He is, his mother says. Her voice is steady. She has been holding herself to a very particular kind of stillness for the past 2 weeks, and she is not ready yet to let it go. For a moment, Robb simply stands with the paper in his hand and the rain falling on the tent above them. Then the question comes, the one that was always going to come. "Do we march?" he says. Catelyn Stark has been thinking about this question since the first word of Ned's arrest reached them. She has turned it over every day for 2 weeks. She knows its dimensions the way you know the dimensions of a room you have been pacing in. "No," she says. Robb looks at her. "Sansa is in that city," Catelyn says. She says it plainly, without weight, because the weight is already there without her adding to it. If we march on King's Landing, Cersei has a Stark girl in her hands, and no reason to keep her safe. A hostage is only a hostage as long as the other side wants what you might do to her. She pauses. Your father understood this when he made his move. He chose the law precisely because the law does not require us to put Sansa in danger to use it. Robb is quiet. The rain comes down. Grey wind turns his great head toward the edge of the camp, where Jaime Lannister's tent sits under its guards. "We have Jaime," Robb says. "Yes," Catelyn says, "and Jaime alive in our hands is worth 10 armies. He is the reason Cersei will not move against your father before the trial. He is the reason Tywin will think twice before ordering anything that cannot be undone." She meets her son's gaze. "The moment we march and put Sansa at risk, we tell the Lannisters that we have decided Jaime is worth less to us than King's Landing. They will draw the obvious conclusion." Robb sets the message down on the table. He does not stand down the army. He does not send his captains home or disband the host or move his men one step further from King's Landing than they are now. He holds the ground he has, and he waits. "Send a raven south," he says, "to my father. We hold. We wait for word from the trial. but we do not move back. Near the back of the tent, Theon Greyjoy leans against the post with his arms crossed and says nothing, which takes effort. He is 20 years old, and he rode into the Whispering Wood last night, and came out the other side with his sword still in his hand, and no one dead by it who didn't deserve it, and the whole thing was glorious in the particular way that he has always suspected glory would feel. They have Jaime Lannister in a tent 50 yards away. They have an army. They have the momentum of a victory. Waiting is what you do when you have nothing. And now they are waiting. He pushes off from the post and goes to check on his horse, and tries not to think about the Iron Islands and what his father would say about this. Meanwhile, to the south and west, in the Lannister camp where the red and gold banners hang damp in the same rain, Tywin Lannister sits in his command tent and reads. He has been given 2 messages in the same hour, which has not improved the morning's quality. He reads them both fully before he speaks. Ned Stark demanded trial by combat. He named the Hound, and Jaime Lannister, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, was taken prisoner in the Whispering Wood. Tywin sets both messages on the table. He looks at the tent wall and thinks, which is what Tywin Lannister does when other men would shout or grieve or drink themselves senseless. His face does not change. He does not send for wine. He does not fire the messenger or tear the messages or do any of the things that would make him feel better and accomplish nothing. He thinks, if Gregor fights and loses, Ned Stark walks free under the protection of the gods' judgment, and Robb Stark's army is facing Lannister forces with Jaime in their hands. If Gregor fights and wins, Ned Stark dies, and Robb Stark's army marches on King's Landing with Jaime in their hands, and nothing left to lose. Either path produces the same constraint. Tywin does not like being constrained. Somewhere in the column, Tyrion hears the news about Ned's trial, demand from a captain who doesn't know what to make of it. Tyrion laughs. One short, sharp sound, and then he stops, and he turns the thing over in his mind with the particular appreciation of a man who has lived through the exact same gambit from the other side. He named a champion, Tyrion says. The captain nods, uncertain. Of course he did, Tyrion says, more to himself than anyone. The man has a broken leg and no army inside the walls. Of course he named a champion. He thinks about the Eyrie. He thinks about Bronn, who fought Ser Vardis Aegon for his life and won it. He thinks about standing in the Vale and watching a man die because the law said so, and there was nothing anyone could do about it, not even the great Lady Lysa, with all her cold fury. The law is the law. When you invoke it correctly, it is the most dangerous weapon in the 7 kingdoms. Ned Stark figured that out from inside a dungeon. Tyrion does not laugh again. He rides. Back in the command tent, Tywin reaches for a fresh parchment. He writes a short message, seals it, and calls for a rider. Not one of the standard dispatch men. One of the quiet ones who travel without Lannister colours. The message goes to Gregor Clegane in the Riverlands. Not to Cersei. Not through the castle. Directly to Gregor, by hand. What it says, Tywin does not explain to anyone. Gregor Clegane rides through the city gates in the late afternoon, alone. No retinue, no soldiers, no banner. Just the man and his horse, and a great sword across his back, which is all he has ever needed. The horse is larger than most of the horses in King's Landing, because it has to be. And Gregor is larger than the horse. The small folk clear a path before him without being told. It is not a conscious decision, the way stepping back from a cliff edge is not a conscious decision. The crowds part and close again behind him as he passes, and no one meets his eyes, and the street goes quiet in his wake, the way a forest goes quiet when something large moves through it. Children are pulled back from the edges of the road by hands that don't need to explain why. Conversations stop mid-word. He rides through the city the way a stone falls through water, and the water moves around him. And then he is past. He rides to the Red Keep and dismounts in the yard, and hands his reins to a stable boy, who takes them very carefully and does not say anything at all. Cersei receives him in a small room in the Tower of the Hand, alone. No small council, no Joffrey, no scribes. She stands near the window with her arms crossed and does not invite him to sit, and he does not look for a chair. They have been in rooms together many times over the years, and it has never required ceremony. "You know why you're here," she says. Gregor looks at her. His face is not expressive in the usual way. It is simply large. "The Hound is your opponent," Cersei says. Her voice is flat and businesslike, the voice of a woman working through a practical problem. "My brother is taken and is not coming. You have no complications beyond the man in front of you." She holds his gaze. "The Hound fears fire. He has since he was a child. It is not a weakness he has ever fully overcome, and I have seen enough of him over the years to know it with certainty." She pauses. "There will be torches at the trial ground. There are always torches. It is not forbidden in trial by combat for a fighter to hold a brand. A man of your size can hold steel in one hand and fire in the other, and he can use them both." Another beat. "I am telling you this as useful information. Do with it what you like." Gregor says nothing. He nods once and leaves. Cersei stands at the window for a moment after the door closes. She does not have a great many feelings about what she has just done. There was a problem, and she has addressed it with the best available tool. The calculation is complete. That night, Sandor Clegane knows Gregor has arrived. He did not hear it from anyone official. He heard it the way you hear things in this city, in the quality of the silence around his name in the corridors, in the look on a steward's face when Sandor passed him in the yard, in the sudden care with which men avoid the subject of the mountain in conversations near him. People have been carefully not mentioning Gregor around Sandor since he was 7 years old, and that habit has specific textures he recognizes. The city knows. The city always knows things before the Red Keep does. He sits in the small room in the White Sword Tower and does not sleep and does not try to. He is thinking about fire. He has thought about fire every day of his life since he was old enough to understand what happened to him, which is the nature of the thing when someone burns you young. The fear lives below the mind, in the skin, in the place where the fire went in and left its permanent record. He can stand near a hearth. He can light a torch if he forces himself to. He cannot, against the deep instruction of his own body, stop himself from flinching when flame comes at his face. When it happens, the instinct is faster than thought, and Gregor knows it because Gregor put it there. Cersei will have told him. Sandor is certain of this the way he is certain of things he has not verified, the certainty that comes from knowing exactly how a particular person thinks. Cersei thinks in advantages. Fire against the Hound is an advantage. She will have told him. He is not afraid. That is almost true. He is not incapacitated. He is a man sitting in a tower in the dark and working through a problem, and the problem is real and the solution is not clear, but he has survived unclear problems before. He is still alive, which is his evidence that this approach works. Meanwhile, in his room in the Tower of the Hand, Ned Stark stands at the window and listens. King's Landing does not go quiet at night. It breathes and shifts through the dark, tavern noise and cartwheels, and the sound of a city that is too large and too crowded to ever fully stop. He has been listening to it for an hour. He asked the guard outside his door what the city was talking about, and the guard looked at the wall and said that he couldn't say, which told Ned what he needed to know without telling him what he already knew. Gregor Clegane is in the city. Tomorrow Sandor Clegane will fight him for Ned's life. There is nothing for Ned to do about either of those facts, except stand at the window and breathe and wait for the morning, which is what he does. He thinks about his daughters. He thinks about Robb holding a prisoner in a field somewhere and waiting for a raven. He thinks about the law and whether he was right to trust it. And he reaches the same answer he reached before. There was no other move. There was this one. He took it. Tomorrow will say whether it was enough. The night gets smaller around him. He stays at the window until the sound of the city thins out. In a room further along the same corridor, Sansa Stark cannot sleep either. She sits at the edge of her bed and watches the torches in the yard below her window. They have been burning since dusk, and they will burn all night, because tomorrow is a trial, and trial grounds must be prepared. She has been watching them for a long time now, the way you fix your eyes on something outside yourself, when you cannot stop thinking about something inside. Her father is alive. His life tomorrow depends on a man who despises every knight who ever lived, fighting his own brother, against the explicit wishes of his king, because the law said so, and no one could stop it. She has been trying since she first understood it to find the part where any of that makes her feel better. She has not found it yet. She thinks about the Hound's face. She has seen it often, in corridors and at table, always a step behind Joffrey. He is frightening in the obvious way, the burns and the sighs, and the flat expression that gives nothing away. She does not know if he can win. She does not know what happens if he cannot. She closes her eyes. She opens them. The torches keep burning. Somewhere in the city, in a room above a yard that smells of hay and old wood, Arya Stark is also awake. The Night's Watch recruiter told her to sleep 2 hours ago, and she said she would, and she has not. She is 9 years old, and her father is alive, and the trial is tomorrow, and there is no world in which she sleeps tonight. She knows her father is alive. She has been holding that fact since the moment she heard it, pressing it to herself the way you press a hand to a wound to keep it from bleeding out. He is alive. He asked for a trial. The Hound is fighting for him. She does not know what it means that the Hound is fighting for him. She knows it means her father thought it through and decided it was the right move, and her father, whatever else he is, does not make decisions without thinking them through. He is alive. Tomorrow will show the rest. Dawn comes grey and cool over King's Landing. The city wakes early, the way it always wakes on a day when something large is about to happen, with the specific energy of people who want to be present and positioned before events begin. The road to the Great Sept of Baelor is filling before the light is full on the city. Vendors set up at the edges. Children are lifted onto shoulders. The plaza in front of the Sept has been cleared, and the ground roped off into a rough fighting square, torches planted in iron brackets along each side, the flames burning steady and yellow in the pale morning air. The crowd looks at the torches. The crowd knows what the torches are for. It watches them the way you watch something that might be significant later, taking note of it in advance. The mountain is coming. The Hound is waiting. The gods, if they are watching, are keeping their opinions to themselves. Everything else is about to begin. The plaza before the Great Sept of Baelor is full. The crowd goes back as far as the eye can follow, pressed together in the cold morning air, 10,000 people or 20,000, the whole mass of the city arriving before first light to stake a position. They stand on roof edges and window ledges and the plinth of every statue. They fill the side streets. They have been here for hours, and they do not move and they do not leave. And when the noise of the city comes to the plaza, it comes altered, lower and stranger, the sound of a crowd that has decided to be serious. Ned Stark is brought out first, under guard, his chains catching the grey light. His leg is bad today. He can feel the grinding in it with every step, and he does not let it show. They walk him to the centre of the rope-marked ground, and he stands there and faces the platform. Joffrey sits in his elevated chair, golden-crowned and tight-faced, with Cersei beside him, and the small council arranged behind. Sansa is at the platform's edge, her hands folded in front of her, watching Ned with the look she has been wearing for weeks, the careful, composed look that costs her something every hour she holds it. Ned looks at her. She holds his gaze. He looks away first. From the Red Keep side of the plaza, Gregor Clegane walks out, and the crowd goes back from him, the way water goes back from a dropped stone. He is in full armor, which means he is carrying close to twice what most men weigh in steel alone, and he moves in it without apparent effort. In his right hand, he carries his great sword, which in another man's hands would require two. In his left hand, taken from the iron bracket at the sept's gate, he carries a burning torch. The crowd sees the torch. The crowd understands the torch. From the opposite side, Sandor Clegane walks out. He is in lighter gear than his brother, half-plate, pauldrons, a mail shirt beneath, nothing that will slow him. He crosses the ropes and stops. He has seen Gregor. He has seen the torch. He is standing completely still for 3 full seconds. Then he keeps walking. The High Septon speaks the words, the old formal words about the god's judgment and the truth that lives in a man's sword arm. Ned Stark stands in the center of the ground and looks at no one in particular. When the signal comes, both men move. Gregor moves slowly by choice. He does not need to hurry. He circles toward Sandor's burned left side, putting the torch between them, keeping it high and in Sandor's eyeline. Every time Sandor's gaze flicks to the flame, Gregor advances another half-step. He does this the way a patient man plays cards. He has time. Sandor circles with him and keeps his eyes on the sword and not the torch, and does not entirely manage it. The torch is in his peripheral vision, and it does not let him go. 2 exchanges, fast and testing, steel ringing on steel, both men reading the other. On the third, Gregor pivots wide and sweeps the torch at Sandor's burned left side in the same motion as the sword strike, a 2-handed problem that cannot be answered with one answer. Sandor gets his blade up for the sword. He cannot get it up for the fire. The torch rakes his shoulder, and he drives away, and blood opens through the mail where Gregor's sword caught the gap. Not deep, not good. The crowd makes a sound. Joffrey leans forward in his chair. Sandor circles. His shoulder is bleeding, and his left side is tighter than it was, and Gregor is watching him with the patience of a man who knows he has established the pattern and only needs to repeat it. The torch comes up again. Sandor's eyes move to it. Stop watching the fire. Watch the feet. He has known this since 3 minutes into the fight. He knows where a man is going to put his weight before he swings, if you watch the feet. And he is not watching the feet because he cannot stop watching the fire. He watches the feet. 3 exchanges at a different tempo. Gregor is slower than his size suggests, and faster than a man in that much armor has any right to be. But the feet are truthful. Sandor reads 2 cuts in advance, deflects them both cleanly, makes Gregor feel the difference. They batter at each other across a length of rope, and neither of them gives ground, and neither of them takes any. Then Gregor changes strategy. He doesn't swing. He walks forward, and with one hand he drives the torch directly at Sandor's face. Not the shoulder, not the body. The face. Sandor's body answers before his mind can. His head goes back and to the right, the whole body flinch that lives below thought. And in that half-second, Gregor's sword comes around and drives into his ribs, and Sandor goes to one knee. The plaza goes absolutely silent. Sansa stops breathing. She is aware that she has stopped, that the breath has simply left her and not come back, and she cannot do anything about it. On the platform, Cersei straightens almost imperceptibly. Joffrey's mouth curves. Sandor is on one knee in the dirt, with his sword hand down, and his ribs screaming, and Gregor standing over him. And Gregor raises the torch and holds it 8 inches from Sandor's face. Sandor looks at it, not away from it, not past it, at it. He looks at the flame the way you look at something you have been running from your entire life when you are finally too tired to run anymore. The burns on the left side of his face are old and deep, and every one of them is Gregor's work, and Sandor looks directly into the fire. He screams. It is not a sound anyone in the plaza has been expecting. It is not fear. It is 30 years of something that has no other outlet, and he drives off the one knee and inside Gregor's reach, inside the sword, where the great sword becomes a problem and not a weapon. He gets both hands on Gregor's sword arm. He drives a knee into Gregor's stomach once, twice, hard enough that the armor cannot entirely absorb it. The mountain stumbles back. The torch falls. Gregor catches himself, and they break apart, and both of them are breathing hard, and Gregor is bleeding from the ribs where Sandor found a seam. The mountain looks at Sandor. Something has changed in the calculation. Gregor reaches down for the torch. Sandor steps on his hand. The crowd finds its voice all at once. It is a sound like the city itself tearing open. 10,000 people who have been holding their breath, releasing it together. And it goes on and on. Joffrey is gripping his chair arms. Cersei has not moved. Ned Stark has not moved. He is watching, and his face shows nothing, and his fists are closed at his sides. They fight. It goes on longer than it should, longer than most men could sustain it. Gregor is trying to reset, to find distance, to make the sword useful again. Sandor will not let him have distance. He stays inside, where the sword is wrong, and Gregor's size is no advantage. It costs Sandor. He takes hits that would stop a smaller man. He does not stop. Then Gregor reaches for the distance one time too many. He overcommits to a wide cutting blow that would have ended the fight, and Sandor goes under it instead of back from it, and the sword passes close enough to take his hair. Gregor's momentum is wrong, and for one moment his right arm is raised, and the armor gaps under the arm where it always gaps, where the plate cannot follow the shoulder's range, and Sandor's sword goes in. Gregor goes down. He does not go down easily. He goes down like a wall of stone comes down, in stages, first the knee, then the other knee, then the full weight of him hitting the ground and the plaza shaking with it. He does not yield. He does not say the word. He lies on the ground, and he cannot get up, and the distinction between yielding and being unable to rise is not one that the gods appear to be drawing today. The High Septon's voice rises above the crowd. The gods have spoken. The combat is complete. Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, is innocent of all charges laid against him. Joffrey's face is the color of old stone. Cersei's face is nothing at all, a deliberate blank that costs her something to hold. Sansa exhales. She exhales for a very long time, the breath coming out of her slowly, and her eyes are bright, and she does not look at anyone on the platform beside her, and she does not cry. Sandor stands in the middle of the fighting ground. His shoulder is bleeding through the mail. His ribs will trouble him for a month. He is still holding his sword, because he has not decided what to do with it yet. He does not look at Gregor. He does not look at the platform where Joffrey is sitting, with a face like a ruined crown. He does not look at anything in particular. He stands in the middle of the plaza, while the noise of 10,000 people washes over him, and he breathes, and for the moment, that is the whole of it. They remove the chains in the plaza. It takes a moment. The blacksmith brought to do it works quickly, his hand steady, and the iron comes away from Ned's wrists in 2 pieces and falls into the dirt. Ned stands in the morning light and does not move. The crowd is still watching. He has been watched by crowds for weeks now, crowds at his arrest and crowds at his confinement, and a crowd at the moment. He almost died on the steps of this same September, and he has learned to treat the watching the way you treat weather. It is present. It is not the point. He stands still for a moment. He breathes. He looks up at the crystal dome of the sept above him, and then he looks back at the guard nearest to him. "My daughters," he says. "Where are my daughters?" The guard looks at the wall. Ned says it again, evenly, the way a lord who has not forgotten that he is a lord says something he expects to be answered. The guard says he will find out, Meanwhile, in the Red Keep, Joffrey Baratheon is already moving toward the throne room at a pace that makes the people around him step back without thinking. He takes the steps 2 at a time, and he is talking before he is through the door, his voice high and tight and cracking at the upper register. "Take him again," Joffrey says. "Find a new charge. Find anything. He is not to walk free in this city." "Sit down," Cersei says. She says it quietly, which is worse than loudly. Joffrey stops. "The verdict has been given by the gods and witnessed by 10,000 people," Cersei says. She is standing at the window with her arms crossed, and she has not raised her voice, and she doesn't intend to. "If you arrest him tomorrow on new charges, every lord in this city and every small folk on every street will know that we didn't accept the gods' judgment, that we called a trial by combat and lost, and then arrested the man anyway." She pauses. "Think about what that does to the justice of this crown." "He is a traitor," Joffrey says. "He confessed. He demanded a trial by combat, and the combat was decided. In the law of the gods, that annulled everything before it." Her green eyes are still and flat. "And Robb Stark has your uncle in a field somewhere. Jaime is in chains. If we move against Eddard Stark before the exchange is arranged, Robb has no reason to give Jaime back. He has every reason to do the opposite." She holds his gaze until he looks away. "We will wait." Joffrey's jaw is tight. He goes to the throne and sits on it and stares forward with the expression of a boy who knows he has been overruled and has not finished being furious about it. The small council convenes within the hour. Littlefinger looks at the table surface with an expression of pleasant contemplation, as if he is thinking about something only moderately interesting. "The legal position is this," he says, when Cersei asks. "Lord Stark has been declared innocent by trial by combat. He is a free man under the law of the Seven Kingdoms and cannot be imprisoned again without new charges presented and adjudicated in a proper legal proceeding." He tilts his head, "which would need to happen before witnesses who are not currently well disposed toward us, given the events of this morning." "The political position," Cersei says. Littlefinger looks up with his customary helpful expression. "The political position is that we have a problem. With that, the question becomes one of management. They house Ned in the Tower of the Hand, in rooms that are not his own. His furniture and his papers were cleared out some weeks ago, and given rooms have been found for the new occupant. But the rooms have a window and a fire, and they are not the black cells. He is free in the sense that his wrists are no longer chained. He is not free in the sense that there are guards at every exit from the Red Keep, and no agreement yet about what comes next. He knows this. He accepts it for now. He has come a long way from the black cells in a matter of hours, and he has learned in the last several weeks that impatience is a form of spending the energy you need for other things." He asks for Sansa a second time, and this time someone answers. She will be brought to him. Cersei permits it, because denying it would mean holding a ward against a man the gods have publicly declared innocent, and that optic is the wrong one when the city is still standing in the plaza, talking about what it has just seen. Sansa remains at court as a ward. She is not yet released, but she can walk down a corridor and see her father. She does. Ned hears the door open, and he turns from the window, and there is his daughter, auburn-haired and careful, standing in the doorway with a Lannister woman 3 steps behind her. He sees in a moment that Sansa is fine, in the functional sense of that word, and that she is also not entirely fine, in the deeper sense of it, and that she has been holding herself together at considerable cost for some time. He does not rush across the room. He simply stands where he is and looks at her, and she crosses to him, and he puts his arms around her, and she is very still for a moment, very controlled, not quite letting go. "I'm here," he says. "I know," she says. "Not much longer." He says it quietly, close, just for her. "I will get you out of this city. I promise you." She nods. She does not say anything else. She stands in his arms for a moment that is measured in breaths more than seconds, and then she steps back and straightens, and the Lannister woman clears her throat from the doorway, and Sansa goes. Ned stands at the window after she leaves and looks out at King's Landing for a long time without moving. Meanwhile, in the White Sword Tower, Sandor Clegane sits in the small room while a Maester's assistant works on his shoulder without comment. The wound is not serious. The ribs are, or will be, tomorrow when they stiffen. He endures the attention of the Maester's assistant with the patience of a man who has had worse and expects worse again. He knows what his situation is. He fought for the man his king wanted dead. He won. He cannot go back to standing behind Joffrey's chair and calling it a position. That was never a position he wanted, and he does not grieve it. But it did have the advantage of clarity. He knows what he is now, which is a man between things, and that is a worse place than most people understand. He is also alive, and his brother is in a physician's tent somewhere, which is not the worst outcome he could have arranged. The Maester's assistant finishes and leaves. Sandor sits alone and looks at the white book on the table and thinks about nothing useful for a while. Varys comes to Ned after dark. He does not announce himself. He arrives the way he always arrives, without sound and without a plausible explanation for how he moved through a guarded corridor without the guards noticing. He sits down across from Ned at the table and folds his hands in his lap and speaks without preamble. "I am not going to apologize for what I told you in the Black Cells," Varys says. "I believed the confession was your best option at the time. Events have revised that assessment." "They have," Ned says. "You have a window," Varys says. "A narrow one. The Lannisters are not going to attack you today. The verdict is too fresh, the crowd is too recent, and Jaime Lannister is too important to them. But they will find an arrangement that makes you useful to them in some way. And useful to the Lannisters means controllable, and you do not want to be controllable by the Lannisters." He pauses. "Robb holds Jaime. That is your leverage. You need to use it before Tywin Lannister figures out a way to neutralize it." "And what is he likely to do?" Ned asks. "If I knew what Tywin Lannister was going to do," Varys says, "I would be a more valuable man than I am, which is already quite valuable." He stands. "Write to your son, write to your wife. Tell them to hold and wait for your word. You have more freedom than you had this morning. Use it carefully." He leaves. Ned sits at the table and reaches for a quill and parchment. He writes 2 ravens and seals them both. One to Robb, short and plain. "Hold Jaime, hold the army. Wait for word from me. Do not move. He is alive." One to Catelyn, the same message, with 2 words at the end he does not put in the raven to Robb. The words are, "Come home." He gives both letters to the guard and watches through the window as the ravens go out over the city, 2 black shapes rising into the night sky, flying in different directions, carrying the same instruction to people who have spent weeks preparing for grief and have not yet been given permission to feel the relief. Outside the Red Keep, in the streets and taverns of the city, King's Landing is still talking. What they saw this morning means something. They are not sure yet what it means for them or for tomorrow, but they hold the feeling the way the city holds heat in summer, reluctant to let it go. Ned Stark walked free. The Hound knocked the mountain down. The gods spoke in a plaza in front of everyone. Whatever comes next, it started here. The chamber they use is small and functional, a room off the Tower of the Hand used for exactly this kind of conversation, where lords come to settle things without an audience. A single table, 6 chairs, and a window that looks out over the inner yard. Ned sits on one side. Cersei sits on the other. Pycelle is at the end with his parchments and his quill. Littlefinger sits to Cersei's left with his hands folded and his expression of pleasant neutrality, which means he is paying very close attention to everything. Joffrey is not here, Cersei insisted, which tells Ned that she has thought this through. A king in the room changes what people are willing to say. Neither of them wastes time on courtesies. Sansa leaves with me, Ned says. We ride north. I make no claim against Joffrey's throne and issue no further challenge to his authority. In exchange, Robb releases Jaime Lannister and stands down the northern host. He looks at Cersei directly. Clean and simple. Both sides get what they need. Cersei's face is composed and still. And you expect me to release Sansa before Jaime is back in King's Landing? I expect you to release Sansa before we leave the city. Yes. Then you expect me to trust that Robb Stark will follow through on his end once you are safely north of the Neck and beyond my reach. She leans back slightly. I have a high opinion of your honor, Lord Stark. I have a somewhat lower opinion of your sons after the Whispering Wood. My son ambushed a military force in open war, Ned says. That is not a question of honor. Capturing Jaime was the act of a general. Releasing him in exchange for a negotiated peace is the act of a lord. He pauses. He will do it. And I have only your word for that. Yes, Ned says. That is how trust works. Cersei's expression does not change. She is not offended. She is simply unmoved. Sansa remains at court as a ward until the exchange is confirmed. Jaime rides through the gates of King's Landing, and your daughter walks through the gates of Winterfell on the same day. She spreads her hands. That is my position. The two of them look at each other across the table. Between them, the exchange waits in the air like a held breath. They both know what is happening and what is required, and neither of them will move first. This is the oldest problem in negotiation, and it has no clean solution, only managed risk, which is why the conversation requires a room with 6 chairs and a man with a quill. Both sides need to move at the same moment. Both sides need the other to trust that the moment will happen. Neither side has given the other any particular reason to trust it. They have given each other reasons in the opposite direction, and now they are sitting at this table trying to work out whether those reasons can be overcome by necessity. Pycelle writes something down. Littlefinger turns his cup slowly on the table. He does this when he is thinking, which is most of the time. The difficulty, Ned says finally, is that you are asking me to go north without my daughter, trusting that she will follow when Jaime arrives. I am asking you to release my daughter first, trusting that Jaime will follow. From where I sit, one of these arrangements leaves a child in hostile hands indefinitely. The other leaves a grown man temporarily at liberty. From where I sit, Cersei says, one arrangement leaves my brother's fate entirely in the hands of a boy of 15 who has already proved capable of putting him in chains. The other asks me to trade away leverage before I have received anything. She holds his gaze. You are not the only one reasoning here. For a moment they are both silent. The fire in the grate ticks and settles. Then Cersei says something that Ned has not been expecting, not the specific words. She says, Joffrey is Robert's son. He has the Baratheon blood in him that Robert's father had, and Robert's grandfather before that. He is the rightful king of these 7 kingdoms by blood and by law, and by the judgment of every lord who bent his knee at his coronation. Her voice is even. She is not arguing. She is stating something she believes completely. He deserves a reign that is not contested at every turn by the grief of men who served his father. Ned listens to this. He hears every word. He holds her gaze and nods very slightly and says nothing, because there is nothing to say that would be useful. He has a truth that would shatter everything she just said. He has had it since before his arrest, and he has chosen not to use it, because using it doesn't solve anything. It starts a different problem, a larger one, and the person who pays for that problem is Sansa, and every child from the Neck to the Stormlands who will grow up in whatever war follows. He made his calculation. He lives with it. The 7 kingdoms have been through one succession war in living memory, and it killed thousands of men and burned hundreds of villages and carved wounds into houses that have not healed 15 years later." He stood at the trident. He saw Robert's face when it was over, a man who had won a war and was not sure what to do with the winning of it. He brought a boy home who was not his and claimed him as his own for 15 years, specifically so the next succession war would not start from this particular spark. He is not going to light it himself, not with a word, not today, not for the satisfaction of watching Cersei's expression change. "Your son deserves good counsel," Ned says. "I hope he finds it." Cersei looks at him for a moment. Something passes across her face that is not quite readable. Littlefinger clears his throat. "There is a possible middle path," he says, in the tone of a man who has just thought of something genuinely helpful and wants to share it. "A staged exchange. Lady Sansa travels south with a neutral escort, not yet in your custody, Lord Stark, and not yet at court for Lady Cersei. At a named midpoint, the exchange is confirmed in both directions simultaneously." He opens his hands. The risk is shared. "Where is this midpoint?" Ned asks. "I have several castles in mind that would serve. Modest places, easy to reach from 2 directions, with reliable garrison masters who answer to the crown's coin." He smiles pleasantly. "I could make the arrangements." Ned looks at him. Littlefinger's pleasant smile does not waver. He looks like a man offering a friend a favor, which is the expression he wears when he is doing something that is not a favor to anyone but himself. "No," Ned says. Littlefinger inclines his head without any sign of disappointment. "The High Septon," Ned says. He looks at Cersei. "Not a castle and not a garrison. The exchange is arranged through the High Septon, before the eyes of the faith, with pledges given before a witness no one in this kingdom can call partial. Both parties receive a dated written pledge of fulfillment before either party moves." He holds her gaze. "That is my counter-proposal." The room is quiet for a moment. "I will consider it," Cersei says. "I will not leave this city without my daughter," Ned says. "When you are ready to answer, you know where I am." He stands. Pycelle makes a note. Littlefinger watches Ned go with the expression of a man who has just seen the edge of something useful, though he is not yet sure what it is useful for. The door closes. Outside, in the corridor of the Tower of the Hand, Ned walks back to his rooms through the quiet of the Red Keep. Behind him, in the chamber, Cersei and Littlefinger and Pycelle remain at the table, and Ned does not need to hear their conversation to understand its broad shape. She will ask Littlefinger what he thinks of the High Septon proposal. Littlefinger will give her an answer that serves Littlefinger. Pycelle will write it all down and agree with whoever speaks last. The negotiation waits, suspended for one side or the other to decide that the risk of moving first is less than the risk of standing still. It may wait a few days. Ned has patience for it that he did not have a month ago. On the other side of the waiting is the road north, and Sansa, and a great many things that belong to him, that this city has been holding in its hands without permission. He can wait a few more days for those. Joffrey does not tell anyone. He is 12 years old and a king, and he has been overruled, outmaneuvered, and made to sit quietly, while the man he sentenced to death walked out of the plaza under the protection of the gods' judgment, and he has been thinking about this for 3 days. He is not thinking about it the way his mother would, in terms of leverage and sequencing and the political cost of each option. He is thinking about it the way a boy thinks about a problem that has made him feel small, which is to say, he is thinking about how to make it stop. He does not go through the King's Guard. He does not go through the City Watch commander and his men, because the City Watch answers to his mother's appointments, and she would hear about it before the night was out. He goes through the household staff, through a man who has been in the Red Keep since before Joffrey was born, who served his father's father, and whose loyalties were formed in an older time when the king's word was the only word that mattered. The man is not a soldier. He is, among other things, handy with a knife. The conversation is brief and verbal, and the man asks no questions. Joffrey goes to bed. The Red Keep at night is a different place than the Red Keep by day. By day it is full of voices and movement, lords and servants and king's guard and the small council, the entire apparatus of a working court. By night it settles into something closer to stone. The torches burn low, the corridors empty out. A man who knows the passages and keeps to the walls can move through the place without being seen by anyone who is looking at the obvious things. The man moves through it in the middle watch of the night, after the guards have settled into their rhythms, moving from junction to junction in the dark. He knows the Tower of the Hand, and he has been through it before on legitimate business, and he knows which rooms have windows that are watched and which stairwells are not. He climbs. He finds the corridor outside Ned Stark's rooms, and he moves along it, soft and careful, his knife already in his hand. The knife does not reach the door. Sandor Clegane is in the corridor. He is sitting with his back against the wall, 6 feet from Ned's door, with his arms on his knees and his eyes open. He is not asleep. He has not been sleeping well since the fight, his ribs making every position uncomfortable, and he has found that sitting in corridors at night is easier than lying down and thinking about things. He has been in this particular corridor for 2 hours, which is an amount of time that seemed reasonable when he started and has since become habitual. The man with the knife stops when he sees Sandor. He sees Sandor the way a person sees a large dog that has not yet decided to move, and his body makes the calculation before his mind does, which is the way bodies work. Sandor looks at him. He looks at the knife. No, Sandor says. He says it the way you say a word to someone who already knows what it means, and is only questioning whether you mean it. He does not stand up. He does not reach for his own blade. He is big enough and close enough that standing is optional. The man does not move for 3 full seconds. Then he backs away. Then he turns and goes, quickly and quietly, back the way he came, and the sound of him fades into the stairwell, and the tower goes quiet again. Sandor sits with his back against the wall. He breathes. He waits until the sounds of the castle reassert themselves, the normal sounds, the ones that mean nothing is happening, and then he stays for another hour anyway. The noise woke Ned. He heard it through the door, a sound that was not normal castle movement, a specific quality of quiet but wrong that a man learns to recognize when his life has spent some weeks being in danger. He did not know what it was. He heard the single word Sandor spoke through the door, and he waited, and when the footsteps did not come closer, he lay back down and watched the ceiling. He does not sleep again. In the morning, when the guard brings his breakfast, he asks to see the Hound. Sandor comes. He looks like a man who has been sitting on a stone floor all night, which is what he is. He looks at Ned, and Ned looks at him. Someone tried, Ned says. Someone tried, Sandor says. Who sent them? Sandor looks at him. His expression carries the answer without stating it. Not the Queen, Ned says. It is not a question. No. She'd have used someone better, someone quieter. He pauses. Tell no one, not the spider, not anyone on that council, just your son when you send the raven. Your son needs to know what this city is. Ned turns to the window. He thinks for a moment. Then he turns back. You stayed in that corridor all night, he says. Sandor does not answer this. Thank you, Ned says, for the second time. Sandor does not tell him not to say it this time. He simply leaves. Ned sits down and writes a new raven to Robb. The old one said, "Hold and wait." This one says more. It says, "Negotiations are moving, but the city is unsafe. Do not release Jaime until I send word that Sansa and I are across the neck and in the north. Wait for that specific word. Do not accept any message that does not contain the word I will tell you now." He thinks for a moment, and writes a word. He seals both the raven message and the word separately, and gives them to the guard with instructions that they travel together. The guard takes them without expression, which is the expression of a guard who understands that these things are above him. Varys learns what happened before midday. He does not learn it from Sandor, who says nothing to anyone. He does not learn it from the man with the knife, who has already quietly resumed his duties in a part of the castle that is not the Tower of the Hand. He learns it the way Varys learns most things, from a source that is not a person in any specific sense, but rather a quality of the castle's awareness of itself. Something happened in the Tower of the Hand in the Middle Watch. He knows what the something was. He does not go to Cersei with it. He does not go to Joffrey. He adds it to the picture he is assembling, the one that has been building since Ned's arrest and will not be finished for some time. He files it the way a careful man files a thing he knows he will need later. This is how the work is done. Not with grand announcements, but with patience, and then one day the file is full. Meanwhile, Cersei is in the Tower of the Hound, running through the High Septon proposal, and finding it more reasonable than she wants to find it. She is also irritated, in a specific and focused way, that negotiations have slowed in the past 2 days for no reason she can identify. She has been patient. She has been strategic. She has managed Joffrey, and managed the small council, and managed the city's impression of a failed trial by combat, and the one thing she cannot manage is Ned Stark's patience, which turns out to be inexhaustible. She does not know that her son spent 3 nights ago giving a man a verbal instruction he should not have given. She does not know how close the situation came to something she could not have managed at all. When she finds out, which she will, it will be the angriest she has been in years. She does not find out today. The Raven arrives from the coast near Dragonstone before dawn, carried by a man who rode hard and arrived looking like it. The message is short, and the message is clear. Stannis Baratheon's fleet is moving. Ships leaving Dragonstone Harbour, heading north along the coast, the number counted and recounted, because the number is significant. He has not declared war. He has not needed to. Ships do not move at night in significant numbers when their lord has only peaceful intentions. The small council reads it over breakfast, which is not an appetite-improving experience. Cersei looks at Littlefinger. Littlefinger looks at his plate. Pycelle makes a sound of concern and says that of course this could have many explanations, a remark that no one in the room finds useful. Varys sits quietly with his hands folded. The fire in the hearth is the loudest thing in the room. "Send a raven to my father," Cersei says. She does not need to explain what she wants to say in it. Littlefinger already knows. Pycelle already knows. Varys knew it before the message arrived. Stannis Baratheon at Dragonstone with a moving fleet, and Ned Stark in the Tower of the Hand, and the northern host sitting at the Trident, waiting for a raven from a man who is running out of time to stay comfortable in King's Landing. These things are connected, and the connection has a name, and the name is the Lannisters cannot fight 2 wars. Meanwhile, in the Lannister camp in the Riverlands, Tywin has already received his own report. He has a different correspondent on the coast than Cersei does, with faster horses, and the news reached him the previous afternoon. He has spent the night with it. He does not sleep when there is calculating to do. He has the Stark situation on one side of the ledger. On the other side, he has Stannis moving ships, and somewhere south of the Stormlands, the younger Baratheon brother gathering banners with the easy charm that passes for leadership among lords who prefer their king to be pleasant company. Renly Baratheon has not declared yet. He will. The Reach lords have been quiet in a way that is not neutral. One war, Tywin can manage. He has managed wars before, and he will manage them again. And he is good at it. 2 wars at once is a different proposition, and 2 wars at once while Jaime Lannister is in a field somewhere in a Stark camp is a third complication that changes the entire shape of what is possible. He calls for a quill. The raven to the small council is brief, and it carries the weight of a man who is not accustomed to requesting things, but has made a calculation. It says, "Reach a settlement with Eddard Stark. Release him and his daughter. Get Jaime back." The Northern War cannot continue if greater threats require our attention. End it cleanly. Cersei reads the raven twice. She sets it down on the table and looks at it for a moment, and then picks it up and reads it a third time. She does not like the sound of her father's instruction. She has been managing this situation carefully, in the way she manages everything carefully, with attention to detail and a long view of consequences. Her father's raven suggests that the careful management has run out of time. She sends for Pycelle. Meanwhile, in the camp on the Trident, Robb Stark is beginning to have a problem with his bannermen. He has held them steady for weeks on the strength of his own authority and his mother's argument, which is that Ned is alive and negotiating, and the moment to march has not come. The bannermen have accepted this with varying degrees of patience, and the patience is thinning. They won the Whispering Wood. They have Jaime Lannister in a tent. They are sitting in a field. Theon Greyjoy finds Robb in the evening, after the ravens. He does not waste time. "Let me take a force down the coast road," Theon says. "Not to storm King's Landing. A show of movement. Let them see us coming. It changes the calculation." Catelyn Stark looks at him. "It changes the calculation by making them kill our hostages," she says. "Sansa is in that city. You move your men toward King's Landing, and the first thing that happens is Sansa becomes something other than a ward." Her voice is steady and flat. "Do you understand the difference?" Theon looks at Robb. Robb looks at his mother and at the latest raven from his father, which says, "Hold, wait, almost done." "We hold," Robb says. He says it with enough force that it ends the conversation. Theon nods and goes. He is 20 years old, and his blood is running hot from a victory he cannot use, and he has begun to find the waiting harder than the fighting. He does not say this to Robb. He checks on his horse and counts the days. In the Tower of the Hand. Ned sits at the window in the evening light and thinks about Joffrey. Not about Joffrey as a king or as an enemy or as a problem to be managed. He thinks about what he knows and what he could do with it and what would actually happen if he did. He has held the truth about Joffrey's parentage since before his arrest. He has held it through the trial, and through the negotiations, and through the assassination attempt, and through all the days in between. He has held it and has not used it, because he has walked through the consequences in his head, and they do not lead anywhere good. They lead to a succession dispute. They lead to Stannis' claim, which is legitimate and rigidly just, and would be backed by force. They lead to every lord in the realm choosing a side in a new war, and the war going on for years, and people dying in it who have nothing to do with whose blood runs in a 12-year-old boy's veins. He has kept the secret for Sansa. He has kept it for every person in every village between King's Landing and the Neck who would pay for the war with their harvest and their sons. He has kept it because he is the person who has to live with having told it, and he is not willing to be that person. He closes his eyes. He opens them. He stays at the window until the light goes. Sandor comes by in the evening, which has become a thing that happens now without being formally arranged. He knocks once and opens the door and stands in it without entering, the way a man who is not sure of his welcome does when he has made a habit of being somewhere. "You're going to go home," Ned says. It is not quite a question. "Yes," Sandor says. "After this." After this. He looks at the window, at the last of the light. Whatever this turns out to be. Ned turns to look at him. "Where is home for you?" Sandor is quiet for a moment. "North," he says. "Or enough north. Somewhere that isn't this city." Ned nods once. He turns back to the window. He does not say anything else. Sandor stays in the doorway for a moment longer, and then he goes. In the corridor outside, the evening sounds of the Red Keep settle into their rhythms, and the city goes on outside the window, and somewhere across the narrow sea and down the coast, Stannis Baratheon's ships are moving on dark water under a cold sky, headed toward a reckoning that has been building for years, and is almost ready. The situation is almost resolved. It is simply a matter of the last few pieces falling into place, which is always the most dangerous part. The preparations for Ned's departure take 3 days. There is a logic to this that everyone understands, and no one says out loud. 3 days is long enough to be dignified, long enough for the paperwork Pycelle requires, and the escort that Cersei insists upon, and the reunion with his daughters that has been the only thing Ned has thought about since the Black Cells. 3 days is also short enough that Joffrey cannot find a new legal mechanism to undo what the gods said in the plaza. The window is narrow. Everyone is aware of it. Sansa comes to him on the first afternoon. A handmaiden brings her to the small tower chamber they have given him, and Ned stands when she enters and does not say anything for a moment, because she has grown in the months since he last saw her properly. Or perhaps it is something else. Something in the way she holds herself, a careful quality that was not there when she was dreaming of knights and tourneys at Winterfell. She crosses the room, and he puts his arms around her, and she is still his daughter. That much has not changed. "Are you hurt?" she asks. She is looking at his wrists where the irons were. "I'm fine," he says, which is mostly true. "Are you?" She thinks about it before she answers, which tells him more than the answer does. "I am now," she says. Arya is harder to find. It takes until the evening of the first day to establish that she is somewhere in the city, that Syrio Forel got her out of the keep when the Lannister men came for her, and that she has been surviving on her own since. The city watch finds her near the Street of Flower. She is dirty, and she has a sword she should not have, and she is furious at having been found, which means she is entirely herself. She does not cry when she sees Ned. She holds on to him with both hands, like she is checking that he is real, and then she steps back and looks at him with her mother's eyes. "I killed a man," she says. Her voice is flat, matter of fact. "I know," Ned says. He had been told. He was going to hurt Syrio. "I know." She waits to see if he is angry. He is not angry. He pulls her back to him, and she lets him, which is its own kind of trust. Meanwhile, across the city, Sandor Clegane is having a different kind of conversation. The Kingsguard does not formally dismiss him. There is no ceremony for what happened, no proceeding or record beyond the fact of what the plaza witnessed. But Joffrey will not look at him, and Meryn Trant has stopped speaking to him, in rooms, and Cersei's meetings have not included him since the morning after the combat. The White Sword Tower is still technically his home. His name is still in the White Book. Yet the thing that was already uncomfortable has become something that cannot last. Varys comes to find him on the second evening. The eunuch sits where Sandor does not invite him to sit, in the wooden chair by the window, and folds his hands together, and does not open with pleasantries. "You're leaving," Varys says. "Am I?" "You are, or you should. The question is whether you leave before someone decides you should be dealt with, or after." Sandor looks at him. "Your little birds told you something." "My little birds tell me many things. What they have told me about you is that the king is very angry, and that angry kings are bad for the health of those who embarrassed them. And you did embarrass him, sir." "Not a sir." "You did embarrass him," Varys says again, as though the distinction is not important right now. "You won a fight he wanted you to lose, in front of 20,000 people and the gods themselves, as the court has officially ruled. The king has no legal mechanism to punish you for that. He has other mechanisms." Sandor is quiet for a moment. He already knew this. He has been turning it over for 2 days. "Where would I go?" he says. It comes out less like a question than it might. The Stark party rides north in 2 days. The Lord of Winterfell is a man who understands debt. He may not use that word, but he understands the thing behind it. Sandor looks out the window at the yard below. "I'm not a sworn sword for hire," he says. "No," Varys agrees, "but you are alive, which is better than the alternative. And the north is far from King's Landing, which is also better than the alternative." Sandor does not answer. Varys takes this as a suitable response and leaves the way he came. The 3rd day is the day Joffrey's instruction bears fruit. It comes in the form of a man named Rennick, who is not the kind of man whose name gets recorded anywhere. He has a contact in the city, a cutpurse who owes a favor, and the cutpurse has a brother who has been hired on as a wagon driver for the Stark party's baggage train. The plan is simple enough for a 12-year-old to understand, which is how it was conceived. Somewhere on the road north, between King's Landing and the Neck, there will be an accident. Something will go wrong with the baggage. Someone will get separated. And in the confusion, Ned Stark will take a crossbow bolt from the tree line. The man who carries this plan to Littlefinger, thinking Littlefinger might be interested in funding a piece of it, has badly miscalculated who Littlefinger works for in a given week. Within an hour, Varys knows. Within 2 hours, Ned knows. Within 3, the cutpurse has been quietly removed from the wagon driver's brother's life, and the wagon driver's brother has been given a different route and a sum of coin large enough to make him lose interest in the whole enterprise. Rennick leaves King's Landing before dawn the next morning. He is not stopped. Being stopped would require a proceeding and a record, and Cersei cannot afford more proceedings right now. But he knows, when he rides out, that the thing he was sent to do is not going to happen, and that whoever sent him knows it is not going to happen, and that this knowing is itself a message sent back. Ned hears all of this from Varys in the small hours of the 3rd night. He sits with it for a while. "You could use this," Varys says. "As leverage?" "No," Ned says. "The king tried to have you killed after a trial by combat ruled in your favor. That is not nothing." "It's the word of a cutpurse against a king," Ned says. "It's nothing in a courtroom, and you know it." Varys looks at him with the expression that means he is deciding how much truth is useful. "I know it. The question is whether the knowledge of it, even without a courtroom, changes what Cersei will and will not do." Ned thinks about his daughters. He thinks about the road north and how long it is. "Keep it," he says. "Use it if you need it. I just want to get home." Varys nods. This is an arrangement he understands. The morning of departure comes grey and cold. The inner yard of the Red Keep is quiet at that hour, which is how Ned wanted it. No crowd, no ceremony, no more spectacle than this city has already had. The horses are ready. The wagons are loaded. Sansa is wrapped in a cloak and standing straight, and Arya is already in the saddle, which she managed without asking for help. Jory Castle is dead. Ned thinks of him when he looks at the men they have given him, a small escort from the City Watch. Strangers, men he has no history with. It is a smaller company than the one he rode south with. That cannot be helped. He is nearly to his horse when he hears boots on the stone behind him, and turns. Sandor Clegane is standing at the edge of the yard. He is not in Kingsguard white. He is wearing his own travelling clothes, plain grey wool and leather, and he has his sword and a pack, and he is looking at Ned with the particular expression he has used throughout this entire business, the one that is not quite neutral and not quite hostile, and refuses to name itself. "I'm not swearing any oaths," Sandor says. Ned looks at him for a moment. He has not had time to think about this. He thinks about it now, quickly. "Arya needs someone to continue her training," Ned says. "Her water dancer is staying in the city?" Sandor's expression shifts by approximately nothing. "I'm not a dancing teacher." "No, you're something else." A pause. The yard is quiet around them. "The road north is long," Ned says, "and not everyone in this city has given up on finding a way to make it shorter for me." "I know," Sandor says. He is not surprised by this. Of course he is not surprised. Then you understand what I'm asking. Sandor looks at the horse, at the yard, at the grey sky above the Red Keep. He has looked at this keep his whole life, and he has hated it for most of that time, and now he is being offered a road away from it, and the road comes attached to a debt he did not ask for, and will probably have to carry anyway. I'm not calling you my lord, he says. I wouldn't know what to do with it if you did, Ned says. Sandor goes to find a horse. The party rides out through the Gate of the Gods as the sun clears the hills east of the city. The streets are not crowded at this hour. Those who are there watch from windows and doorways, small folk mostly, the kind of people who get up early and note everything and say nothing. Some of them recognize the stark sigil on the escort pennants. Some of them recognize the tall man on the ugly horse at the front of the column. A woman somewhere in the crowd calls out something that might be a blessing or might just be good morning. Ned does not look up to find her. He rides. Arya rides beside him for the first hour without speaking. She is watching the city fall away behind them, the spires and walls and the smell of it, the particular smell of 10,000 people living on top of each other that she has been breathing for months. It is not a smell she has enjoyed. Are we going straight home? She asks. We have stops to make, Ned says. River Run first if the road holds. Arya thinks about this. Is Mother there? She will be, or word of our route will reach her. Sansa rides on his other side, quiet and watchful. She has said more in 2 days than she said in the weeks before, a kind of flood of conversation that Ned has been grateful for even when he cannot follow all of it. Septa Mordan is not with them. That is something Sansa has not raised yet. He suspects she will, eventually. There is time. Behind them, at the tail of the column, Sandor Clegane rides alone and does not speak to anyone. The city disappears behind the first rise in the road, and they are out in open country, the fields brown with late autumn and the sky large above them. And Ned breathes in air that is not the Red Keep and does not say anything, because there is nothing that needs saying. The road north is long, but the road goes north, which is the direction that matters. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Cersei Lannister stands at a window in the Tower of the Hand and watches the last of the Stark pennants disappear over the ridge. She watches until there is nothing left to watch. Then she turns back to the room and to the letter on the table from Casterly Rock, where her father is already asking questions she does not have good answers for. The business with Stannis will not wait much longer. She knows this the way you know a winter is coming before it arrives, in the quality of the wind and the behavior of the birds. Her father will come to the city. He will come with opinions and forces and a face like a closed door, and she will have to account for everything that happened here, the trial and the plaza, and Ned Stark walking out through the Gate of the Gods with his daughters and a dog at his back. She has started making her list, the things that can still be retrieved, the pieces that are not as lost as they look. There are more of them than she expected, if she is honest. Ned Stark is gone from the city, which removes the most complicated problem. The debt she owes Varys for the information about the cut purse is a real debt, but manageable. Littlefinger remains useful. The court is shaken, but not broken. Joffrey is angry, but Joffrey's anger, properly managed, can be redirected. And Stannis is coming, which is a war. But wars are something, she understands. Wars have clear terms. You win or you lose, and you know which one is happening. She has survived worse than this. She tells herself this in the voice she keeps for moments, when she needs to hear it from someone who will not flinch. Then she sits down, pulls Tywin's letter closer, and begins to draft her reply. The letter from Robb reaches Ned at an inn 3 days north of King's Landing. It comes with a Stark rider who has been pushing hard since Moat Cailin, the horse lathered, and the man not much better. Robb writes in the practical, unadorned way he has always written. which Ned taught him, which Ned was taught. The army is intact. They have held the lines. Whispering Wood was a victory, but not the end of anything. Tywin Lannister has pulled his forces back, regrouped, and is doing something patient and deliberate that Robb cannot quite read yet. He wants his father home. He does not write it that way, but Ned hears it anyway. Ned writes back. He tells Robb to hold. He tells him the situation in King's Landing is resolved for now, and what that means. He tells him about Sandor Clegane, briefly, because Robb will want to know the shape of the company his father is travelling with. He does not tell him about the crossbow plan, because Robb does not need to carry that, and there is nothing useful to do with it on a battlefield. He seals the letter and gives it back to the rider, and tells him to sleep before he rides again. The man looks like he will argue, and then looks at Ned's face and decides not to. They reach Riverrun 6 days after leaving King's Landing. The castle rises from the confluence of the Red Fork and the Tumblestone the way it always has, solid and red and planted into the land like it grew there. Ned has not been here since the war, before everything. He does not let himself stay with that thought. There is too much road still ahead of him for thoughts that go backward. Catelyn is standing in the yard when they ride in. She crosses the yard before Ned is fully off his horse, and he catches her and holds on, and he can feel the weeks of it in the way she holds back, the particular grip of someone who has been afraid for a long time and has just been given permission to stop. He does not say anything. Neither does she. There is a crowd in the yard, and neither of them cares. Sansa is crying by the time she reaches her mother. Arya is not crying, but she is holding Catelyn's hand with both of hers, which is close enough. That night, around a table in Hoster Tully's hall, the shape of what comes next takes form. Robb's war cannot be simply stopped. Tywin will not allow it. The Lannisters want terms that include the North bending the knee, which Robb will not do, and Ned would not ask him to, not after what was done in King's Landing. But the terms of a negotiation have shifted. Ned Stark, walking free, changes what the Lannisters can claim they hold. Cersei's leverage died in the plaza with the mountain, and everyone around the table at Riverrun knows it. Hoster Tully is old and unwell, and he listens from his chair at the head of the table without saying much. But when he does speak, the words carry. The boy held, he says. He means Robb. He says it with something that is close to satisfaction. Edmure wants to press the advantage. He lays out the case the way he always lays things out, with energy and conviction, and somewhat too many words. The Lannister forces are extended, he says. Robb has momentum. They could push. Ned listens. He is tired in a way that goes into his bones and does not leave quickly. But he is also clear-headed in a way he has not been since before all of this started. Stannis, Ned says. The table goes quiet. Stannis Baratheon's fleet is moving, Ned says. His claim to the throne is real. If we are still at war with the Lannisters when he arrives at King's Landing, then whatever he takes there, he takes without us having any say in the shape of it. Stannis is the legitimate heir, Catelyn says carefully. He is, Ned says. And Stannis rules like a man who has never doubted he is right about everything, which means he will not be easy to work with regardless of how things land. But that is a problem for later. The problem now is that we need terms with the Lannisters before Stannis makes terms irrelevant. There is a longer silence. Edmure is thinking. Catelyn is watching Ned in the way she watches him when he is saying something she wants to fully understand before she responds. What kind of terms? Edmure asks. The North and the Riverlands go home, Ned says. The war stops. The Lannisters acknowledge that what happened in King's Landing was settled by the gods' judgment and do not retry it. And Joffrey's claim is a matter for Stannis and the Iron Throne to work out without us. That's asking Robb to give back what he won, Edmure says. Robb won his father's life, Ned says. That is what the war was for. I am alive. The war accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish. Edmure stares at him. Catelyn does not stare. She looks at the table for a moment, and then she looks at Ned again, and something shifts in her expression. She understands what he is saying. She may not entirely agree with it yet. She understands it. Robb will have opinions about this, she says. I know, Ned says. I'll ride to his camp from here. The Raven to Robb goes the next morning. The reply comes in 2 days, faster than the distance should allow, which means Robb had riders out watching for it. The reply is short, which is also Robb, and it says, "Come north and tell me yourself." Ned rides for Robb's camp. The army Robb has built is not the army Ned left behind. It is larger in some ways, leaner in others, and it has the particular feel of a force that has been in the field long enough to stop pretending. The men who were playing at war in the early weeks are not playing anymore. The losses took that out of them. What is left is something more serious, harder to read from the outside, but steadier when you put weight on it. Robb meets him at the edge of the camp on horseback. He is 16, and he is already not quite the boy who rode south from Winterfell with fire behind his eyes. He looks at his father for a long moment without saying anything. Then he gets down from his horse. They do not speak for a little while. They walk the perimeter together, the way Ned used to walk Winterfell's walls with him when he was small, pointing at things, naming them. Robb wants to see Ned whole. Ned understands. He wants the evidence that the man in front of him is real and unbroken. You look thin, Robb says. I was in a cell for a while, Ned says. Robb nods. I heard all of it, from different sources, and none of the versions quite matched. What do you want to know? Robb thinks about it. He is learning to think before he asks, which is also a change. The Hound, he says. What do I do with the Hound? Ned almost smiles. He's traveling with us. He is not sworn to anyone. He is not a threat to you. He served Joffrey. He served a king who treated him like a weapon. That is not the same thing as loyalty. Ned pauses. He fought for me. He did not have to. I take that for what it is worth. Robb chews on this for a moment. All right, he says finally. What about the terms? They talk for a long time. Robb pushes back on most of it. He has reasons, some of them good ones. He has men who died for this war, and he does not want their deaths to feel like nothing. He has a sense of what honor requires that is very much his father's, refracted through his own particular way of standing in the world. He is his father's son in the ways that matter, and his own person in the ways that also matter. In the end, they find the shape of it together. Ned does not simply tell him what to do. That is not how this works anymore. Robb is a commander, and he has earned that. Ned explains the situation with Stannis, which Robb had not fully known. He explains what the Lannister position looks like from King's Landing without Ned as a hostage in it. He explains what he thinks comes next. Robb listens with his jaw set and his eyes steady, and at the end he says, You think this is the right call. I think it gives us the best chance of getting home, while home is still something to go back to, Ned says. A silence. All right, Robb says. The negotiations are handled through ravens and intermediaries and take 2 weeks. Tywin Lannister drives a harder bargain than anyone but Ned expected, because Tywin is not a man who concedes ground graciously, even when he is conceding from a weaker position. But the position is weaker, and he knows it. Stannis Baratheon's fleet reaches Blackwater Bay while the negotiations are still ongoing, and the news of it reaches both sides at roughly the same time, and after that, the talks move faster. The terms are not everything Robb wanted. They are enough. The North and the Riverlands stand down. Robb withdraws his forces across the neck. Tywin gets no acknowledgement that he was right about anything, which matters to him more than it perhaps should. The question of the Iron Throne is left formally unresolved, which everyone understands to mean that it will be resolved by Stannis and the Lannisters without the northern armies in the field. The day the Ravens go out confirming the terms, Robb sits in his command tent and stares at the parchment for a long time. "We're going home," he says. "We're going home," Ned says. The road north from the twins is cold and long, and Ned has ridden it in worse weather and worse company. Grey wind runs alongside the column in the mornings, a massive shape moving through the frost-grey fields, and the men watch him, the way soldiers watch things that mean something about whether they will be all right. A direwolf running free and whole means something good. They are willing to believe that right now. Sandor Clegane rides at the rear of the column. He has spoken to Robb once, briefly, an exchange that Ned didn't witness, but whose conclusion he gathered from the fact that Robb didn't bring it up again afterward. He has spoken to Arya more than once. Ned does not know what they talk about. He suspects it is swords, which is fine. Arya has been watching the man with a focused, forensic attention that Ned recognizes because he has seen it before, in her eyes when she is learning something. He does not interfere. The Hound is not a gentle teacher, from what little Ned has overheard. He is also not an unkind one. They see the wolf's wood on the 14th day. The trees are dark and dense, and they smell like snow and pine sap and the particular cold that comes off old northern forests, a cold that has nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the age of the trees and the depth of the roots. Ned breathes it in and doesn't say anything about it. He doesn't need to. Sansa sees it too. She is riding beside him, and she says, quietly, "I forgot how dark the trees are here." "They've always been this dark," Ned says. "I know," she says. "I forgot anyway." Winterfell appears on the third morning after the Wolf's Wood, the grey towers rising from the flat land in the way they have always risen, stone on stone and impossibly old, and completely unchanged by everything that happened in the south, because Winterfell does not change. It keeps its own time. The hot springs run through its walls, and the smoke rises from its chimneys, and the banner of the direwolf hangs from the gate tower in the cold morning air. Bran is on the walls. Ned sees him there, small at that distance, watching the column approach. Rickon is probably with him. Ned cannot tell from here. He will find out soon. The gates open. Ned rides through them, and the world he has been trying to get back to for months closes around him on all sides, familiar stone and familiar smells and familiar cold, and he stops his horse in the inner yard and sits there for a moment, because he has earned a moment. Behind him, at the tail of the column, Sandor Clegane rides through the gate of Winterfell and looks around at the place. He has never been this far north. He looks at the walls, at the smoke from the great hearths, at the direwolf banner overhead. He does not say what he thinks about it. He dismounts and tends to his horse, because that is what you do when you arrive somewhere, and he does not make any announcement about whether he is staying or going. He stays. Not that day or that week, but in the weeks that follow, it becomes clear enough that no one raises the question anymore. He is given a place in the yard, and he uses it, mornings mostly, working through forms with a practiced sword when the yard is empty. Arya finds him there, as Ned suspected she would. He does not chase her off. Ned watches this from a window one morning, and then goes back to his work, because it is not a thing that needs managing. The news from the south arrives in pieces over the following weeks. Stannis Baratheon takes King's Landing in the third week of winter's first month, the battle brief and violent and decisive in the way that Stannis does things. Joffrey is taken alive. There is a trial of a different kind, one with Stannis as judge, and it is not a long proceeding. The question of legitimacy is settled by a block in the castle yard, which is also how Stannis does things. Cersei is taken into custody. Tywin is already marching west by the time King's Landing falls. too slow or too unwilling to come to his grandchildren's aid when he might have mattered. He reaches Casterly Rock and digs in. Varys is not in King's Landing when Stannis arrives. Varys is, as far as anyone can establish, simply not anywhere that anyone can find him, which is presumably how Varys prefers it. Littlefinger is found in Harrenhal, in circumstances that Ned doesn't get the full details of and doesn't pursue. He is dealt with by the new regime, which is a thing Ned can hold at a distance. Stannis sends a raven to Winterfell. It is brief and formal and contains no warmth, because Stannis doesn't have warmth for letters, but its meaning is clear enough. He knows what Ned knows about Joffrey's birth. He knows where Ned stands. He wants to know what the North will do. Ned writes back. He writes carefully, and he writes honestly, which are sometimes the same thing. He tells Stannis that the North acknowledges his claim. He tells him that the North has been through a war and needs time to recover. He tells him that he is available to discuss terms of fealty in the spring, when the roads are passable, in person, in a place that is not King's Landing, because Ned Stark is not going back to King's Landing. Stannis's reply takes 2 weeks. It is also brief. It says, "Spring, then." Ned folds the letter and sets it on his desk and looks out the window at the yard, where snow is falling in the late afternoon light, soft and steady, covering the grey stones white. It is quiet here. It is cold and quiet and familiar, and his daughters are in this castle, and his sons are in this castle, and the walls are solid around all of them. It is the quietest he has been in a very long time. Robb comes to find him there, standing at the window. He leans against the doorframe and looks at the yard below. "Stannis wants a lot," Robb says. "He has read the letter." "He does," Ned agrees. "He'll get some of it. Not all of it. Not all of it," Ned says. Robb is quiet for a moment, watching the snow. The men want to know if there's going to be another war. Ned thinks about this honestly. "I don't know. Not this year. That's something." "It's enough for now," Ned says. Robb nods. He straightens from the doorframe and goes back to his own work, because there is always more work, and that is also something that does not change. The snow falls. The yard fills white. In the training ground at the eastern wall, Arya Stark is moving through forms with a sword, while a large grey-scarred man watches and occasionally says something, and she adjusts her grip or her stance or the angle of her step and goes again. She does not stop until the light is gone. Ned watches from the window until it is too dark to see. Then he goes to dinner, where his family is waiting. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share,